Hey everybody, listen up. I got mega huge news. Meat Eater Live is heading back out on the road. That's right. Join me and the crew. Clay Newcomb, Cal, Yanni, Spencer's going to be there. Phil the Engineer's going to be there. Meat Eater Live headed back out. Now, when you get every ticket, okay? Every ticket you buy, you get a signed copy of our new Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook. This tour is celebrating the release of the book. Buy a ticket, get a signed copy, Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook, wild game recipes for the grill, smoker, camp stove, and campfire, which I'll point out is a $38 value. Here's where we're going to go. April 23rd, the Mesa Art Center in Mesa, Arizona. April 24, the Balboa Theater in San Diego. April 25, the Grove in Anaheim, California. April 27, the Crest Theater in Sacramento. April 29, the Union in Salt Lake City. April 30, the Egyptian in Boise. May 1, the Wilma Theater in Missoula. May 2, the Bing Crosby Theater in Spokane, Washington. May 4, Revolution Hall in Portland, Oregon. And May 5, the last day of the tour, Pantages Theater in Tacoma, Washington. For tickets and more information, visit the events page at themeateater.com. Hope to see you at the show.
Hey, this is Tyler Jones, and you're listening to the Element Podcast. What's happening on my woods, people? It is a beautiful 70 degrees inside this house that we're sitting in. I guess you could call it a house. It's my house. It's not really a house. It's more like a shed. But
the kind you find?
It's not. It's a different. It's the kind I find in shed season. Yeah. I typically, Casey gets really. He's tired of my shed hunting stories that happen every year in March, where I go around and take pictures of buildings and post them and hashtag shed. What is it? Shed rally.
Shed rally. Yeah.
Anyway. It is not a beautiful 70 degrees outside this building, though. It has been quite a weird spring. I know February 2nd, I think it was like straight up had been 70s plus for like 4 days. The water warmed up. We went bass fishing, did well in the afternoon. Then it got back into like, oh, yeah, it's February. And then since then, it's just been rain like every third day, it seems like. And like it just feels like we're on the brink of rain the last like week, like every day until it finally does rain. But it's just so humid outside.
And then it's sauna fest the next 2 days.
Yeah.
So that's what we're dealing with today. It's not actually like temperature-wise that hot outside, but the humidity's through the roof. And I worked out and ran this morning, and man, it was like so hard on things that shouldn't have been that hard. It's just you're sweating so much, and I don't know. I don't know if I'm ready for the summertime.
Yeah, dude. After I ran this morning, I had to sit. I don't know, 30, 40 minutes before I stopped, like, sweating. I didn't take a shower because I just continued to sweat.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, dude, it's been kind of brutal. Humidity is one of my least favorite things.
Yeah, I tend to live in humid places, too, no matter where I've been. And it's kind of stinky, but that's part of the reason we try to go out west as much as we can, you know, and I know you're getting geared up for, like, a giant Western vacation where you're going to go pretty much cover the whole Pacific Rim, it seems like. I don't know.
Dude, it's exciting. Like, I can't tell you how it's starting to, like, really, it's getting close. Like, we're 24 days out, I think. So it's to the point where, like, I can feel it. I honestly should be tying flies and stuff, and I'm not. But I just haven't really, I haven't had the time. And it's been that, but also that I just, like, when I do have time, I'm just like, oh, can I just relax for a second, you know?
I think I brought you something today in relation to that vacation.
I hope it's a smallmouth bait.
It's not a smallmouth bait. Where are you going to catch smallmouth at?
The Pacific.
Oh,
Pacific
dude,
Northwest.
you better rock check every single one of those things.
Dude, there's some good.
There's
good smallie fishing up there, from what I understand, like Oregon and everything.
Really?
Yeah. So, I'm thinking about doing it, and that's the main thing. I mean, we'll probably eat some trout along the way, but like, I want some bass fillets.
You know what I hope you catch?
What's that?
A pike minnow. I would like to see one of those things.
There's a bounty on them in some places, aren't there?
Yeah, some places, even when they're native, there's a bounty.
Really?
Yeah.
Why is that?
I think something to do with salmon, like they're trying to, because it's one of those things where like around here where coyotes are native, but you still have a bounty in some places.
Gotcha.
Where like, in that scenario, I think they're like knocking down native salmon populations after we've already desolated them.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
So that's why they're trying to do it. I don't know for sure. I don't know that much about it, but I just saw something about it on some Facebook page I follow. I don't know which one.
yeah. I saw that too recently about the bounty. So that's all I knew. I don't even know what one looks like really. So
I think it looks like a giant fathead minnow, pretty much, with big lips.
Yeah.
So should be cool.
They just eat eggs.
I think they eat smolt.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like little babies.
Dang.
They're like a predator.
That's weird.
Yeah. So you're gonna catch them on like a streamer or something. That'd be cool. Yeah.
I'm gonna make some salmon-colored streamers.
Do it.
Baby salmon streamers. Yeah, man. So speaking of fishing, I haven't done a ton, but I got to go out in a kayak Sunday evening with a buddy and with Jet, and I did catch 2 fish on topwater.
Nice.
Yeah, I caught one. First one was a sand bass, which was disappointing, I would say, to me. And then the second one was about a 2-pound bass that he hit it back to back to back on 3 different casts, throw it out on the 4th cast. I'm like, there's no way that this is a bass still hitting this thing, you know. And he hits it and catch him. He's about a 2-pounder.
Man,
so, it's exciting.
Getting it done. It's fun.
I know. It's nice, man, just to go out and relax and still come home with a fish. Because sometimes I go out and I'm not relaxed and I'm focused and I don't catch anything. And I'm like, what is the point of this?
Yep, I know it. Yeah, speaking of focus.
Dude, speaking of
today on the podcast,
we're
going to be talking about focusing some things.
I like it, dude.
We have got Erik Barber of Vortex Optics. Erik, with this podcast, is officially the most tenured individual, or at least tenured guest on the Element Podcast. I think it's number 4 for him.
Yeah.
Right? He was like way back. We talked about big woods hunting back in the day. And then he's killed public land bucks like every year we've known him. Big ones in multiple states. Dude is a slayer. And this time...
That guy makes me mad.
No, he doesn't. You can't be mad at Erik Barber.
You can't. But it's like, hey, okay, at this point, can you just start your own podcast and like tell people how to kill a deer or anything? Like, because, you know, like there's all these guys that are like experts or whatever. And Erik will go out like 3 times a year in the whitetail woods and kill like a 150 on public. And then a mule deer and
then
turkeys
just
galore.
Laugh about it. He's like, oh, I'm just lucky. You know? And he's like, dude, whatever. But no, I like humble people, man.
Yeah, for sure.
That's what makes people good dudes, and Erik is good dude for sure. But we're gonna talk about a lot of optics stuff. Of course, some stuff kind of relating to more of that Western stuff that we're gonna be doing some this fall. But then also just in the whitetail woods, there's so many. I feel like you're talking about experts, right? And so often people like to dive into like the 300 level courses on whatever it might be. Well, sometimes there's some pretty basic stuff that gets left in the dirt.
Oh, yeah.
Like, for instance, we're going to talk to Erik about like what's the big difference in 8-power and 10-power binoculars. And, you know, just kind of that as like a sample. Like, those are things I kind of, like, I have my own personal opinions, but that doesn't mean that they're, like, referenced or sourced by any means. I just kind of know what I like, you know, and I'd like to kind of know really is one better than the other, and that sort of thing. We're going to talk to Erik about that.
Yeah, for sure, man. And that's one thing, like, I feel like we do try to like make sure we don't skip over the like level 1 courses in some of this stuff. And I know that we do sometimes. We get into talking with some of these like public land guys like Jared Scheffler or whatever that you guys may have heard. And it's like, that guy's on level 5. You know what I mean? Like, and so it's hard to ask him a question real basic without sounding like an idiot to Jared, you know? So it's like, sometimes I know you guys there's going to be listeners that, you know, I mean, we have people comment on posts and on YouTube and stuff, and I can tell that there are guys that are very new to this and trying to learn. So hopefully what you can learn on the level 1 stuff from us is from us, right? Like, the level 1 stuff is like the mistakes we've made, you know, we may be hitting that level 2 sometime, you know, so.
And honestly, I think we are going to, in the heat of the summer when it's not fun to be outside, we're going to do a little bit of YouTube work on some of the mistakes we've made in the past on our YouTube channel. Specifically talking about some of the like rut hunt and stuff we did out of state this year. I feel like there's a lot of things that we need to revisit and talk out and talk through, and maybe we can all learn a little bit of something from it because I know I've made my share of mistakes, and I need to learn from them as opposed to ignore them.
Right. Yeah, dude. And man, that's like, I remember doing some of that stuff last summer, and I was just thinking about like how this is something that you and I like did last summer, and I'm going to miss because we're not going to, like, basically here in 24 days, I'm going to be gone, and then you're going to be gone. And so like until mid-July, we're probably not going to see each other for the whole summer. Mm-hmm. And like one thing that I really enjoyed last summer was like picking the garden that you had grown and like making fresh stuff out of it.
Yeah.
And like going and doing a podcast while we're grilling like some deer backstrap and some fresh squash. You know what I mean? And like, you know what I mean?
I love it.
Yes. Like, and then eating hot peppers out of the garden, that kind of stuff. Like that's just like summertime to me. And that's one thing that like, I feel like there's a lot of listeners that can relate to this. Like just hanging out with your buddy in the summer, doing some barbecuing, shooting the bows, you know, that kind of thing. And that's what we're not going to get a lot of until like halfway through July, and at that point we are 2 months out from elk hunting.
Ooh.
So it's like we're going to do some of that for sure later this summer, but it's going to be also a lot of elk prep still to be had right there, and definitely some excitement. So I'm pretty sad that we're going to miss a lot of that for about 45 days, but
are y'all really going to be gone 45 days?
We're going to be gone 30, and then y'all are leaving like about, I think, well, y'all might not.
What day
How long are y'all going? Like a week? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, y'all will be back about the same time we are then, I think.
Yeah. So we're going to go and just do like a probably Colorado, maybe New Mexico if I can fit it in there, loop. Cassie isn't sold on New Mexico yet because she thinks, I mean, most of New Mexico is not my favorite place to be.
Dude, it is rough.
It is rough. But there are some redeeming areas. So might be able to make it out to the Gila, and like we talked about, like I really want to knock out the Gila trout before we get to hunting season. That way I'm not worried about trout at all while we're there.
Yeah, and we were actually on Cody Rich's podcast, which we had Cody on our podcast recently, and so we were on his podcast. If you're listening to this, it should be released already, and we talked about the whole like. I mean, we were kind of just joking, you know, about how
I guess
the whole
that would
Gila
be tongue in cheek, right? Isn't that what that would be?
Yeah, we were tongue in cheek about the whole Gila trout while we're out there, kind of thing. Which I guarantee you shoot a bull on day 3. I will be trying to catch a Gila trout. You know what I mean?
I guarantee you, before we leave, I'm going to try it.
Yeah.
Like if it's like the last day and we're packed out, heading out or whatever. I'm going to take the 30 minutes to go try to
drive to the river.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
That's but it ain't gonna be no chasing the Gila trout until we've shot, a big bull.
We got our priorities in line.
Yeah,
don't you worry.
But he was definitely he took it a little more seriously than we did. So, but go listen to that. That's on the Rich Outdoors podcast. That's Cody Rich, and he was we got to be on his podcast. So that was cool. Anyway, speaking of things of excitement and fishing, not for Gila trout, you recently had you accomplished something big, dude, that we've been kind of trying to do for 3 years, but not like voraciously pursuing it or anything. And you technically have already accomplished it, but we didn't document it.
Not on film. Yeah. So the idea was to break a state record on film on the fly rod. Yep. And we did that. Yeah. And that's we are fixing to release that film soon.
Yeah,
we have one more clip to film of it, and then we're going to be getting it out, right?
Yeah, I think by the time this podcast airs, it should be out.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
That's cool. So it's not very often you get to catch a 20-pound fish plus on the fly rod and document it, and it break a state record.
I know, dude.
It should be pretty sick.
It is going to be sick. And what's crazy is we were down to the wire, like on the day, like. And we, like I said, he's caught one before that was probably like every bit as long, but definitely like fatter because I looked at pictures of it the other day. But like I know, like in the last case, the fish flipped out of your arms whenever you picked it up, and before we could get a measurement on the fish, he took off, flipped out, took off, and like your rod tip or your line was wrapped around like the end of your rod or something. And it kind of like stoutly held the line, and the hook broke, right?
The hook broke, yeah. Those are stout little hooks, too. I was ticked. Something was just wrong with that one, but this year kind of took a different approach, like went and landed the fish like in super shallow water where that couldn't happen. So, but got that done.
Yeah,
and I'm ready to watch the video. It's going to be cool.
Yeah, y'all go watch it if you get a chance, and let us know what you think. And if you're a fisherman, let us know what's the biggest fish you ever caught, because I mean, as far as like freshwater goes, that's probably bigger than any fish I've ever caught.
I think that striper I caught was probably close to that size.
Yeah, that was a toad.
Yeah, but
that fish was fat too.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like that striper was just like had a.
I think it has
full
not
belly.
egged out yet. Yeah, I think it was. She's a big old sow, but like and both of those fish are on the fly. But those are definitely two of my bigger fish on a rod and reel in freshwater.
Mm-hmm.
Now I've caught a giant shark, in saltwater. But
Yeah,
I mean, we're
me
talking
too.
about a giant rod.
Well, not a giant, but I've caught
Yeah.
a 5-footer.
I caught a 7-1 bull.
Nice.
Yeah, in 2011.
You got pictures of that?
No, I don't.
Oh, no.
Hey, let me tell this story right quick.
Okay.
This is so heart wrenching for me. Okay, like I was into the land based shark thing for a while. Like it was like my thing. I still love to do it. It's just hard to make happen when you live in East Texas. But we had gone to a set of jetties, and you actually had to kayak across the channel to get to where we wanted to fish, because that's where all the jacks were running mullet up and down the bank. Went over there, kayaked across, me, my mom, and my dad, all in our own individual kayaks. My mom freaks out a little bit. She's kind of scared, which is okay. Like, she isn't very experienced in a kayak, so she's kind of unsure about the kayak thing. Well, we catch a couple jacks, and that was awesome in itself. Have you caught a jack?
Like amberjack and that kind of thing?
No, like a yellowtail jack, which, I mean, amberjack, I guess, is in the jack family. But
I've caught some big jacks.
well, okay.
I've caught, like in,
Those
several
things-
different places in bays and stuff. I've
Yeah.
caught like 20-pound jacks.
Big sickle
Yep.
tails and fins, yeah. So that's a Jack Crevalle is what that is. And that's what we were catching, and they just fight hard, hit hard. They call them jetty tuna. Like, they're awesome. But caught those, and then you cut those in half or whole if you get really crazy, and you use that as a shark bait, right? So you put your hook and leader through there, big old 20-aught circle, run that out in the kayak, drop it, and it's starting to get late. It's like shark 30, and my mom's like, it's time to go, let's go. And then, so my dad, being the good husband he is, like, escorts her in the kayak back across, and he leaves me there by myself, which I'm not scared or anything, but it's just like I have a lot to manage on my own, right? And as soon as, like, I kind of start to lose sight of them, my clicker starts going off, and woo, and it's on. And my dad said he could hear it, but it was like too late to turn around. And he's like, I just knew.
So are you on the land at this point?
I'm on a jetty.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm on a jetty at this point, and which was a little bit unconventional. Normally, you're on the beach and you go and drop baits out over each sandbar, but we were on a jetty, so it's kind of you're more parallel to the sandbars. Anyways, my mom and dad had taken all the bags with them, so I had no camera, and this is before the days of like having your iPhone camera with you all the time. It's only like 10 years ago, but it seems so far away, right? And yeah, I caught this bull, didn't have a tape or anything, so I had to take my leader and put like the swivel spot at the fish's nose and then stretch it out. And then I made a little crimp in the leader to where the tip of his tail was. That way I can measure it when we got back.
That's cool.
Yeah, so 7'1", big female bull shark. She wasn't real fat because she already pupped out, but yeah, that was a big
That's
fish.
a big bull, dude.
It's big. It's a big fish.
Like, they don't get super long, right?
No, I mean, not on the Texas area. Like a 9-footer is max probably. Some of have you ever heard of Zambezi sharks? Like the Zambezi River in Africa.
I know that. I've heard that river. Yeah.
Those are bull sharks. They just call them Zambezi sharks there, and they get way bigger over there for some reason. Like some of them are like 1,000-pounders. It's crazy. But
and ocean stuff is so wild. Like the different
there's
dynamics.
always something bigger.
Yeah.
In the ocean, like around here, it's like, okay, I mean, a big gator gar or something, yeah. But like, there's always something, and it doesn't matter how big you are, something will eat you in the ocean.
That's why I love. I've talked about this before, I think, on the podcast. This is why I love fishing. Is like, it is the most like, just merciless place on earth. You know what I mean? Like, everything eats everything, and there's always something that's going to be like eating whatever you're looking at, or will eat it. You know what I mean? It's just crazy. Like, even those big tarpon that are 200 pounds down in Florida, like, you can watch videos of dudes having 12-foot hammers come up and just smoke them, you know. It's like, that tarpon is as big as me. I'm scared to hop in that shallow water with a 12-foot shark. You know, like, this is crazy.
That, like, the documented human attacks by hammerheads is like almost nil.
Yep.
Like, it's almost zero.
I've heard that.
I think that like maybe there's two, and it's always like a mistaken identity, or like it's a situation where somebody like has like a half a tarpon that a shark's already eaten, and then they get bit or something. But they don't hardly ever do it, just because I don't know. They're just hammerheads are made to hunt the flounders and stingrays.
The floor of the
exactly.
ocean.
So it's just not something they're never.
They've got like electromagnetic sensors or whatever, right?
All across their head.
Yeah,
you know. So they're like, if you ever watch one feeding on the bottom, like I've never seen it personally, but I watch a lot of video or whatever.
Shark Week, bro.
Yeah, actually, I hate Shark Week.
Really?
It's so Hollywood nowadays.
Yeah, it is.
You know?
It is.
I like a good solid documentary more than like The Search for Megalodon.
Yeah,
when it's like, okay, listen, that shark's not around anymore.
yeah.
Anyways, we're getting way off. It's just fun to talk about stuff like that.
It is,
because it's fun to think about the unknown, man.
Yeah.
And sometimes whenever you're out in the wilderness, out in the woods, things that are far away seem pretty unknown until you can make them closer. And that's what optics are for.
That's right.
See how I brought that all the way around?
Dadgummit. Dude, you're so pro. You're so pro.
Nah, I don't know.
Well, now that you brought it here, let's continue on no further and have Erik. How about?
Sounds good.
All right, so now on the phone we have Erik Barber from Vortex Optics. What's happening, man?
How's it going, guys?
It's going well, man. It's heating up here in Texas pretty nicely. I know earlier off the air you said that you guys are having a bunch of rain. We have had a ton of rain this year as well. We're glad to see some sunny weather, but it's getting warm, that's for sure.
Oh, man, I know. And the only bad part about that is that means bugs are in the very near future. That's not a good thing.
I know, dude. KC has like a slight immunity to mosquitoes, and I absolutely hate them. So he's like, he can just roll through, mosquito land, and I'm over here just freaking out. And he's like checking his map, on his phone, and they're literally just eating him alive. He don't care,
Well, I have a theory on this, Erik. Like, I'm a little bit hairier of a dude, per se. So mosquitoes have a hard time getting to my skin. However, in turkey season, when the ticks are out, they do a lot better on me because I get ticked up, dude. It's like 5-1 me to Tyler ticks. I don't know what the deal is, but you give and take.
That is interesting.
It makes sense.
Interesting because I'm going to actually put that theory to the test because, like I was telling you guys, we're hunting with the hunting public guys next week, and as you know, they're pretty hairy too as well. So if those guys are immune to ticks, you're going to see me growing my hair out and looking real strange here in about 12 months.
Yeah. You should do it either way, man. Long hair's in. Come on. Let's do it.
It's the thing, man.
Well, we'll see. We'll see what we can do.
Yeah. It looks like turkey season's going pretty well for you so far. Have all your success so far been on public out there?
Yeah, it has. I mean, it's I've definitely spooked way many birds than I've killed. But we just, I'm lucky to live in an area of the state where we have a lot of birds. We have a lot of public land, and being that, my wife sometimes works weekends and long hours at night, and we don't have kids, I spend a heck of a lot of time in the woods. So it's kind of like, it's almost by default that I end up getting lucky, 1 every 10 times, it seems.
Oh, dude, you play it down, man. Dude, your last fall was incredible. Like, what? It was like almost like Erik Barber, the brand. You know what I mean? Like, had your own brand going because you had so many just awesome animals that you guys were taking, man.
It was unbelievable. I mean, if I can keep whatever, Lucky Rabbit's foot that is, keep that going, I'll be pretty stoked about it. But it's just one of those things, like a lot of time. And then, I guess that's kind of like what I do in my free time. I don't really, I guess on a weekend, if I have like a couple hours to kill, that's probably what I'm going to do is like go out or something.
Right.
So, that kind of, I think that made those little lifestyle changes, and it's all about priorities. Like, that's not the best fit for everyone probably, but if that's kind of like what your thing is and that's what you enjoy doing, I think, a lot of guys with a similar mindset would have very similar or even, you know, better results.
Yeah, man. I don't know. I still can just like picture that buck you killed in Illinois, I believe it was last year on pub.
Yeah.
And, that is the dream buck of all dream bucks. Like giant, heavy, nasty.
Thank you, man.
Oh man, like that's what you want coming in on you, man, when you're sitting there on public. So I bet that was a crazy experience. And to go along with kind of what I'm saying here, KC mentioned earlier that with this podcast, you are the most featured guest on the Element podcast that we've ever had so far. And I think that's in part due to because you just are a big buck slayer and we do big buck breakdowns with you all the time. And dude, it's just we can't get rid of you.
I appreciate it, man. No, I hope you don't find a way to get rid of me anytime soon, because that would mean bad things for my success. So let's keep this rolling as long as we can.
Yeah, dude.
You're a good enough guy, Eric, that even if you don't kill stuff, we'll still have you on the podcast. Don't worry, dude.
I appreciate that, man.
Yeah, dude. No problem, man. So, now you're I guess the first time we actually interviewed you, you were working with Midwest Whitetail, and now you're up in the state of Wisconsin, and you're working at one of the most on fire optics companies in the world right now. I'm sure you have a lot of knowledge to spill about that world. So what's the first thing one needs to think about when they're buying optics? This is kind of something that I think a lot of guys, especially in eastern whitetail woods, are pretty apt to go out and just go to Bass Pro Shops and get the cheapest pair of 8x that they can find. And, I think there's obviously a way to do it when you want to step up your game, I think, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would say, and this is coming more from even just a Vortex standpoint. Obviously, I work for Vortex, and, I'm really passionate about what we do, but, I really do think that good optics really does make a difference, even for the whitetail guy. Because to your point, when you go out and you just buy the, whatever's on sale or whatever's cheapest, and that certainly works. It's not like you can't play the game without top tier optics, but by investing a little bit more into that, and you don't need to break the bank on it by any means, but whether that's a small compact pair of 8x42s or, honestly, I run 842s or 1042s for most of, my whitetail hunting. But by having optics and really kind of using them as part of your workload, when you go out hunting, making a conscious effort every time you get up in the stand, kind of glass around, see what's, nearby you. Because a lot of times, especially if you're, trying to hunt really close to where these deer are hanging out, you're not going to pick stuff up with the naked eye, especially in early season when, the forest is really thick. Mm-hmm. So just kind of implementing a glassing strategy into your hunting, I guess, ritual. Every time you get in the stand, you maybe do a little scanning, you start pinpointing different areas. You're going to start picking deer out before it's very obvious, Mm-hmm. And as you guys know, in the whitetail game, sometimes it can just be, that 30 seconds of, if you saw the deer first, that can be the deal breaker and whether or not you're able to seal the deal or not.
Right. So I guess having the binos handy is an important part of the process that you're speaking to right now. And I feel like KC is definitely better at what you're talking about right now than I am. But it's also kind of a natural thing that he has binos on a harness on his chest most of the time, and I have a camera on a harness on my chest. So I don't have handy binos, you know what I mean? So how are you running your binos? What harness are you using, or are you using a harness? How does that work for you?
Yeah, so I've used both. I use our leather patch harness, just like that traditional, there's tons of different models out there, just the ones that's the kind of flexible material or whatever, where it just kind of hangs right on your chest. But then more recently, I've actually been using our Guide Series glass pack, and that's, Alaska Guide Creations makes that for us. And the nice thing about that glass pack is you have a little bit more storage space in there. So you can keep like a wind checker or whatever you want, like, or one of those Poseidon dark energy chargers in that front pouch. So it gives you a little more storage space, but, you know, basically you want to make your binoculars feel as comfortable on you as you possibly can. Otherwise you're not going to like wearing them. So like I always, you know, talk to people who, you know, they say, oh, I'll just use a strap that comes in the box or whatever. And that's fine. Like that's going to work for you. But if it makes it more of a hassle and it starts to become a conscious thought that, man, these things are bouncing around, or, you know, every time I bend over, they're drooping way down, whatever like that, you're gonna start using them less and less. So, you know, by having them, you know, in a glass pack, you got them really tight to your chest, super quiet. You're going to keep your optics clean all the time, or at least more clean than you would if they were exposed. So I think that also, you know, goes a long way. And, you know, like I said, it's that comfort thing. It's like, it's on you, you know where they are. And it almost after a while becomes a subconscious effort to just like open up that glass pack, pull them out and scan an area without even thinking about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I run that bungee one that you're talking about, the Vortex one. And I love it in the tree stand, you know, cause it's low profile. There's nothing to it, but, after just doing more and more run and gun style hunting, like I run in that all the time, where like I might be like jumping a creek or doing something like that's a little bit more physical, and man, those things bounce. They've hit me in the chin a couple times, and it hurts, you know.
Yeah.
like it gets kind of crazy.
Totally.
And it's cool to know. I didn't know that. I've been looking at that harness. What'd you call it? I don't know.
The guide harness.
The guide harness, yeah.
Yep.
I didn't know that was made by Alaska Guide Creations. That's cool. I'm glad to know that it's like, you know, made by like one of those higher-end companies like that. But, you know, for me, man, I pull those flip covers off like as soon as I get them. You know, like they're just so in the way, and I always forget to flip them off, you know, whenever I'm throwing my binos up to look at something. And I think that's like probably a huge advantage to having it in that guide harness, to where, like you said, it stays clean, because I'm always getting dust and junk on there. And there's no there's no better way to take a higher end set of optics and make them junky than to have a bunch of dust on both sides of it, you know? So,
well, no, it's interesting you brought that up, that you take your you know, covers off right away, because I remember watching something, Eric Chesser, who is one of the guys over at Hush, and he posted a video where he was talking about his binos. I think he sent them in, he had them cleaned up or whatever, and we sent them back. And anytime we send our binos back to folks, we'll include things like, you know, the lens covers, you know, we'll spit shine them up, they'll look brand new, and we'll send those back. So, but, you know, where I'm going with that is he said the same thing. As soon as he got those back, he took them off, and he's also using a glass pack as well, that's, you know, keeping everything enclosed. And that's one less thing. Like if you're, especially in the whitetail woods, you got, you know, a matter of seconds to like glass something as it moves in between two trees. And if you got to mess around with that, you know, taking off your flip caps, that can be the difference right there.
Oh yeah. Or just forget that they're on. You know, I can't tell you how many times, like, learning that, how many times I threw my binos up in a split-second thing where, like, a deer is, like, crossing an opening or something, and I'm like, oh, all I see is black. That's great. You know?
Yep.
Yeah, it's kind of rough.
Totally.
So earlier, you said you use either 8s or 10s when you're whitetail hunting, and I feel like there's got to be something to that. You know, for me, my preference is 10s. I like the little bit just extra reach. But is there a science behind when you pick up what, or is it just a personal preference thing?
A lot of it is personal preference, but there is a bit of a science to it. And I might butcher this a little bit, but basically, so like, think about your DSLR camera. And if you're running one of those lenses that's not a fixed f-stop, you know what I'm like, where basically as you increase your magnification, you go from f3.5 to maybe f6.3.
Yeah.
So as you increase your magnification there, basically what you're doing is you're losing a little bit of light gathering capabilities. And now that's certainly not to say that higher magnifications like 12s or 18s do a poor job of gathering light, because they definitely, you know, they still gather light. You're going to, I mean, if you pick up a pair of our Kai Babs, which are our, you know, higher magnification binoculars, you're still going to notice really good optical performance. But all things being equal, like if you take a pair of Viper 8x42s and then you pick up a pair of Viper 12x50s, those 8s are going to have a little bit better light gathering capabilities. So you'll do better in low light, and they have, and this is where I might butcher, but they have a wider like exit pupil. So that is the amount of light that is gathered into the objective lens and then comes through your eyepiece into your eye. Mm-hmm. So the larger your exit pupil is, the more light gathering capabilities that you have, and that's very important in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Gotcha. So, real quick, I hate to go back to this, but you're a bow hunter most of the time.
Yep.
Does that having those binos on a pack on your chest, does that ever get in the way when you're shooting?
No, and that's a fantastic question, because guys get weirded out by it, and I think the people that keep that discussion going are the folks that just can't get over the mental side of it in their head. Because I mean, the string, like if you look at it, the string actually isn't, your string is at such an acute angle when you're at full draw mm-hmm. that it's actually going past your glass pack if you are wearing one of the bulkier ones. And the Alaska Guide Creations ones are more robust than like maybe the FHF Bino harnesses or some of the other ones on the market. But you can still, even with a really robust glass pack, you can still shoot your bow effectively at full draw and have no problems with
mm-hmm.
that.
Okay. Yeah, definitely something I thought about.
I think that it is more of a mental thing. I think guys get, it's like guys, they develop target panic.
Yeah.
It's nothing that their release isn't performing well. It's just that mental aspect of it, getting over like slapping the trigger. Same thing with like being comfortable with having your string somewhat close to a foreign object when you're at full draw.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can see where like, even if you were like old school running like a 72-inch longbow, where like you don't have that acute angle, it's still going to be enough of an angle to where your chest is in the middle of the body, so is your anchor point. So no matter what, you're not going to have a situation where your string comes back far enough to hit the middle of your chest, right? It's just not going to be a thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because, like, if that was the case, you would see people shying away from wearing insulated clothing out in the tree stand. We know that's not the case.
Yeah, for sure.
It's the same premise. It's like, oh, bow hunters can't wear puffy jackets now. That's never going to be a thing.
Right. So I guess when you're thinking about, as a whitetail hunter especially, when you're thinking about buying a little better optic and you're looking at binos and you're thinking, okay, 8x10 or 8 or 10 by, which one should I do? The 8s are typically going to give you a little more light gathering. And I know for me, like personally, there's been times when hunting pretty open country, when being able to see a deer that's headed your way and identified as a target buck, say early in the morning right before shooting light or something like that, can really help prepare you mentally, among other things, for that shot. And by the time he gets to you, maybe it's shooting light or whatever, or in some cases, technical shooting light might be still pretty dark because it's overcast or something like that, So I can see where that can kind of sway somebody's ideas going into this thing. Are there any other things you might think about that you can think of that would be important as to somebody who's buying a nice set of binos for the first time?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, how I would think about that is I would start evaluating like the way that I'm going to use my binoculars. Am I, personally, I live in Wisconsin. If I'm someone who just lives in the Midwest and I'm just bow hunting the Midwest and I'm not going on out-of-state trips, I'm a homebody, I'm staying close to home, I'm probably going to go with the 842s. Just because you're also getting a wider field of view, and that's pretty big in the timber. If you're trying to glass a buck, and you're trying to make a decision on whether or not you want to shoot or, pass, whatever, that wider field of view is going to help you have a little bit faster target acquisition. So you're going to, you'll be able to throw those binos up to your eye and you're immediately going to find that deer and not to say that you can't do that with the 10s, but there's a little bit more magnification there. So it is just slightly more difficult. But now on the other hand, if I'm somebody that, bow hunts whitetails in the Midwest, I want to maybe go out and do a hunt out west, or, even if it's just recreational, like I want to, my wife and I go to Estes Park, Colorado every now and then. And like if I want a little bit more magnification of view elk or whatever, then I would probably steer towards the 10s. And for whitetail purposes, I would never go higher than a 10 by 50. 10 by 50 versus 10 by 42, really, literally the only difference there is the objective lens size. And, it is true that all things being equal, the larger objective bell will gather more light than the 10 by 42. But optics are such a subjective piece of equipment, like my eyes are different than your guys' eyes. And that's true of anyone. So what I would recommend for someone, especially if they're hung up on the 10 by 50 versus 10 by 42, I would recommend just going to like, any kind of, retail place where you can get your hands on them and, look through them side by side, because that's the best way to really figure out like, okay, is the 10 by 50s worth the extra investment as opposed to the 10 by 42s. So that's how I would really answer that, because for the average whitetail guy, a 12 by 50 set of binos, that's a little bit more specialized. That would be something that I would maybe only use during like preseason scouting. And I honestly can't see a situation where I would ever take a 12 by 50 with me into the whitetail woods.
Right. Okay. So you mentioned the Kaibabs earlier. That's your more, I guess, powerful set of binos there. What's the max power you guys sell in those?
So right now they're 18X. Okay. And so they are, it literally is a mini spotting scope. Those things are, if you're a Western hunter, and for example, I hunted South Dakota this past year, and in that situation, if I, were to go back and really evaluate, okay, is it worth the extra weight? Do I want to carry a spotter? Do I not want to carry a spotter? Do I want to carry 2 binoculars? I could see a situation, if that was my kind of hunting, where I would maybe carry a pair of the Kaibab 1856s, and then, another pair of like maybe, Razor, Viper, Diamondback, whatever, in either the 8x42 or 10x42 configuration. Because then you're kind of getting best of both worlds. And then also, another thing, this is kind of like just a quick side note on that, the most important tool, even I would say more so, obviously you got to have your optics in order to justify using this tool, but it is a tripod. And using your binoculars on a tripod, because if the Western glassing game is something that you're getting into, you're going to be so much steadier. You're going to be able to pick apart the landscape. You're going to have less eye fatigue if your optics are stationary on a tripod than if you're sitting down and you're sitting cross-legged and you're digging your elbows into your knees so you can kind of get a little bit of stability. That can't even compare to what a tripod is going to do for you.
Yeah.
And if you just put on a little like tripod mounting adapter, you can literally pop your buckles on your glass pack off, take the binoculars, put them on the tripod, glass, pop it off, and you don't have to mess around with switching base plates, anything like that. They just, integrate on and off with, if you're using like one of our unadapters, for example.
Yeah.
So can you kind of explain that for people who are not versed in that? Like, what tripod are you using, and what are you talking about as the adapter there? What does that look like?
Yeah. So last year I ran it's the Pro GT tripod in our line, and that was probably, it actually definitely was more than I needed for that hunt. So basically, tripods, there's different things that you want to look for in different tripods, and this goes, well beyond the Vortex lineup of tripods. This is anything that you're looking at, whether, regardless of brand. So, if you're, like, for example, last year when I was in South Dakota, I went there for an early season mule deer hunt. And a lot of what I was doing was, I was really mobile. I would get to a glassing point, and then I would take my binoculars off and I'd put them on a tripod and glass from a seated position. So in our lineup, that actually the best solution for me for that application would have been our Summit SSP, which is a super lightweight, super, minimalist tripod. That way it's going to take up less room in your backpack. It's a lot lighter, but but on the other hand, you probably wouldn't want to run a big, heavy spotting scope on it, like a 15 to 45 or, anything even larger than that, you would want to probably shy away from. So now as you go up in class of tripods, you're going to, see a little bit more stability, but with more stability traditionally brings a little bit more weight, a little bit more features like, maybe a more robust fluid head or anything like that. So that would be a situation where you would have to, evaluate, okay, my hunting style is, maybe a little bit more stationary. I'm going to sit on one point, I'm going to glass here all day, and I don't see myself hiking a whole lot. Or on the other hand, I am somebody who's, going to be hiking a bunch. Then I want something a little bit lighter. And then as far as the adapters go, so the unadapter is the one that I just mentioned there. And the cool thing about that is it's when you look at the unadapter, it can kind of be confusing to figure out. But basically what it does is there's a post that'll screw onto the hinge of your binoculars, and then the receiving end of that post will go onto your 1/4-inch threaded screw that sits on your fluid head. Mm-hmm. So, and then there's kind of like a dovetail that connects those two. So basically, rather than, I'm picturing like a camera that you have mounted to a tripod. You have a base plate that you need to release. Mm-hmm. It's not even as technical as that. It literally, this dovetail just slides into the post, and you can deploy your tripod. You can glass for a little bit, and then, it's like, okay, I got my deer spotted. I got to go, and I got to go right now. You literally just pop that thing right out of the post. You don't have to push a button, anything like that. It pops right off. Put your binos right back in your glass pack, fold up your tripod, throw that in your backpack, and you're off.
It's cool.
So, yeah, so that's really handy. And, having a setup like that is going to encourage you to use that tripod more than if you have something that's a little bit more of a workaround to get your binos outfitted for the tripod. Because if it takes you several minutes to just get set up, you're probably not going to use it,
Yeah. Yeah, sure. And through this, you've talked a lot about weight, and I think that might be something we need to talk about a little bit here. And let's just kind of go basic. For a whitetail hunter, it's not that big of a deal, especially for guys who might be hunting private and, have a 1/4 mile walk to the stand or less or whatever. For guys who are hunting public, it might be a little bit more of a thing, but still, we're not counting ounces, as much. But if you're a Western guy, backcountry kind of guy, ounces kind of matter. Can you just kind of give us a general idea of the difference in weight when you're talking those 8x42s you like to use versus the bigger kaibabs, and then if you were to kind of go into a general one of your smaller spotters, what's the weight difference you're looking at in those three?
Yeah, so I actually got the product pages pulled up in front of me right now.
Ooh, prepared.
Razor HD. Yeah, heck yeah. So our 8x42 Razor HD, our Razor binoculars are our top tier binocular in our lineup. So that has the best optical performance and, the whole 9 yards. Those weigh in at 24 ounces. So now if you compare those to, let's say, we do have a 12x50 in our lineup in the Razors, and those are going to be right at 28 ounces. So you're really only talking a difference there of 4 ounces in those, mm-hmm. Between those two, which are in the same lineup. Mm-hmm. But then, where you can really save weight is in your spotting scope. So we have a really ultra lightweight, minimalist spotting scope, which is the Razor. It's a Razor 11 to 33. And that's we call it the baby Razor because it literally, if you put it up next to the big 22 to 48 or the 27 to 60 Razors,
yeah,
this thing, you would look at it and you'd be like, oh man, I don't need that. That's a kid's toy. It's really small. But that thing still has unbelievable optical quality. And the nice thing about it is, okay, you're comparing this 11 to 33, which weighs in at 25 ounces. Literally, it will fit in it'll fit in your cup holder on your backpack, like where you would throw like an Nalgene water bottle or whatever.
Yeah,
that's cool.
And now let's compare that to the next step up, which would be the 22 to 48 by 65 razor spotter, 56 ounces. Ooh. So you're literally doubling the weight. You're doubling the size. And for most bow hunting applications, 11 to 33, that magnification range is going to tell you everything that you need to know, unless you're in an area where you literally have like antler point restrictions and you need to count tines, or some super specific situation where you, for whatever reason, need more magnification. Then that would be a situation where I would say, yeah, maybe you do need something like the 22 to 48. But for like the average guy, like myself, when I was out in South Dakota, I was after any buck, if it had antlers, I was going to go after it.
Yeah.
And I can tell all of that. I mean, 33x, optical zoom that's plenty to pick apart the landscape. And then also the really nice thing about that is you can back out to 11x, and now you can almost kind of like scan the landscape like you would with your binoculars.
Yeah.
So you can really do, like for someone who is thinking about going on, a Western hunt, like where they are going to be doing heavy glassing and they do want the best of both worlds, that would 100% be the loadout kit that I would go with. It would be a 10 by 42 binocular or a 10 by 50, depending on their preference. And then I would also pack that 11 to 33 Razor HD spotting scope, and that would cover you for. I mean, I honestly can't think of a situation other than maybe you're doing some super long range hunting, and then obviously that's a totally different topic.
Yeah.
But yeah, for bow hunting, that's what I would roll with.
Anybody except a sheep hunter that's glassing like 6 miles away.
I was about to say that.
Exactly.
I was on a sheep hunt, and we were like, it was stone sheep, so it had to be, an 8-year-old ram. So it's like, even with 60 power, we were like, I can't tell. I can't tell how many rings are on that sucker. So, yeah.
So and then that Razor 11 to 33, that's kind of like, I don't know, I can just see it being super beneficial for like that run and gun window mount style glassing too, where it's not bulky. You can throw it on your window real easy, and say you got deer and soybeans 800 yards away. It's like really lightweight, not
falling
out hours on the pavement.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, it's super lightweight. You're not even going to notice that thing in your backpack. I mean, if you're carrying around a loaded up Nalgene water bottle, like the weight there is almost, it's very comparable, and like everyone has a water bottle in their pack. So it's like, this would literally just be like adding a second water bottle,
So a lot of times, like if people are doing that backcountry kind of thing, or at least, Western style hunting, a lot of times it's kind of in pairs, there's like 2 or 3 people doing it. So do you think, like, what would be the perfect combo for, say, 2 guys who are going to go on a hunt like that together?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, so that's how we did it when I went to South Dakota last year. I had a friend that was with me on that hunt, and anytime, unless we were just scanning like super hard and trying to, like, for example, we hunted Western South Dakota where it's like that Badlands country where it's very cool. Broken terrain. So unless we were really trying to scan a lot of stuff really fast, in that situation, we were both using our binoculars. But, anytime other than that, where it's like, okay, we really don't have any leads right now. We're just going to try and cover as much country as we can. He would be on the 11 to 33, and then I would be on my, 10 by 42 binoculars. And that covered us for everything, because then, like you said, you're working in tandem with a buddy, and I would maybe glass something that I'd be like, okay, if you go off the edge of this point and go down to the creek and then go 2 drainages to the left, there's something in this cut. I can't tell what it is. Can you get on it and confirm whether that's a deer or not? Mm-hmm. And then he would do that. And with that spotting scope, him and I could communicate very effectively back and forth, and we were able to confirm or deny, whether or not we had targets or not.
So talk about that further a little bit. And if you were by yourself, what does your process look like? How are you breaking apart the landscape? I can see where, like you said earlier, the wider the field of view is, the better and quicker you're able to, have target acquisition. You can see deer moving, and then you can throw a spotting scope. How does that work for you?
Yeah, definitely. What I would do if you're solo, I would still stick to that same game plan. I would have and assuming this is a bow hunt that that I'm doing, I would have like 10 by 42 binoculars, and then that spotter again. And I would probably keep the spotter on the tripod, and then just kind of do some of my glassing freehand. I know that kind of goes against like what I kind of mentioned earlier, but that allows me to at least like glass and scan quickly. And then anything that I, want to confirm, I can do so immediately on the spotter because it's already deployed. And, in an ideal world, maybe you have, where weight isn't an option. Maybe you got 2 tripods, but, I don't want to go through the hassle of taking my binoculars off the tripod, taking the spotter and replacing it with that. So I would, have that spotter ready to go. That way, anytime I see something, in a cut, whatever, maybe it's 800 yards away, I can pop that spotter on and confirm right away. And the other thing that's worth noting is you would be surprised. I was definitely surprised how much detail you can pick up at a far ways away with a pair of 10 by 42. Or there's another buddy of mine that works here who is an absolute like wizard with all this stuff. And, he uses 8 by 42s for hunting very similar country out in western South Dakota. And you would be really surprised how much detail and how much you can actually pick up with binoculars. So, if you are in a situation where you're like, man, do I even need the spotting scope? Don't feel like it's something that you absolutely have to have, because obviously that is an investment. It's, let's say you're talking about going on this hunt this year and not buying the spotting scope, which, is going to run you a couple $100 because, and that's going to take out of your gas budget, or you go without. I say go without, get some experience, just bring, a good pair of binoculars, bring a tripod. You're certainly going to be able to hunt. You're just going to have a nice to have feature not with you. Yeah. And, we all know that you can still get it done without you can get it done with the bare necessities.
Sure. Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's good advice, man. Is there any particular strategy when glassing, as far as I know some guys will grid? Are you just kind of random, or what approach do you take there?
So I grid everything. Okay. And this even, dovetails back into the whitetail world. So when I get up in a stand, the very first thing I do after I get my bow set up and everything like that is I'll, just kind of like, a lot of times, it's an area that I've kind of scouted. So I know okay, I expect deer to come from this area or whatever. Or even if it's a spot that I'm just totally new in, like for example, we talked a little bit about like that Illinois buck that I shot last year. That was the first time I was ever in that area. And the first time I got up in that stand, I immediately started picturing, okay, the wind's doing this. I'm going to picture deer coming from this area. They're probably going to work around this drainage. So in doing that, I'm looking at a ridge, and that's 1/3 of the grid. Now I'm looking in the bottom of that drainage that kind of leads up into my stand. That's another 1/3 of the grid. And then, if anyone who's listening to this is into photography, or they've ever seen the grid on their iPhone, that you can enable or disable, that's basically what I'm overlaying onto the landscape. And I'm using key features that is something that I can come back to every time. So like a log, a very prominent log, or a big, standout oak tree that looks very unique, compared to everything else out there. And that'll be one of the borders on that grid. So then what I'll do is I'll cover everything to the right of that tree, everything to the left of that tree, everything, low left, low right, and then that's one area that I've dissected thoroughly. So, and then I'll just keep doing that. And I realize that can kind of sound ridiculous in the whitetail woods, because a lot of times, a deer just walks past you. But if you're in an area where you think you're super close to deer, I'm envisioning like some of these, like hunting buck beds is a strategy that gets talked about a ton. And if you literally are hunting over a specific buck bed and you're trying to, Dan Infalt always talks about getting in as close as you possibly can to that bed. So, you might keep a little bit of a slight roll in the terrain in between you and that bed as you're approaching that stand. And then as you're getting up there, you're going to be very keyed in on that suspected bedding location, because if he's in his bed, then it's very, high stakes. You got to be on your game. You got to be really quiet. And if you can confirm that just by having a good glassing strategy, that can be the difference between blowing that deer into the next county or, going into stealth mode and hopefully shooting him 30 minutes later,
Yeah, for sure. So when you're, especially in the open country, kind of back to that, I noticed when I was on a spotter, especially doing the sheep stuff, that, it was hard to keep my eye closed on the other side. Do you have any tips for just eye fatigue, or do you wear an eye patch, or how do you approach that situation?
So I've never had I've always kind of been able to mind over matter, just kind of keep my eyes my off eye shut. In an instance where maybe it is super bright, what I would actually do is I'll just literally take my palm and kind of cover up that left eye if I'm glassing on my right. Another thing that I've actually seen, and this is super cool, I think I saw it in the Go Hunt in their online store, and I'm sure other brands do this too. But basically, it's like a hood that goes over your binoculars. So if you are glassing on it basically goes over your eyepieces. So if you I'm trying to paint a picture for this if someone's unfamiliar with it, but basically it's like a neoprene cover that comes off the back end that makes it entirely dark when you're looking through your binoculars, that you're not having any other sunlight maybe come in through the peripheral vision,
Yeah.
So that's going to really help you hone in through the glass. And like you said, that's going to eliminate eye fatigue. That's going to keep you glassing longer. And if you are on a hunt where glassing is paramount, you want to be able to spend as much time behind the glass as you can. And if something as simple as that is going to help you get another couple hours of, effective glassing, then that is an extremely worthwhile bringing with you.
Right. Yeah, for sure, man. Can you talk about the proper way to focus a binocular?
Yeah. So that's something that, a lot of guys my wife is notorious about this. She's like, I can't look through binoculars, and her eyes and my eyes are different. It's
right.
Anytime you put up your binoculars, you have an optical diopter on them. And basically that's going to that you're essentially focusing your eye, to the specific side that diopter is on, because obviously eyes are different, whatever. So the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to take it outside and adjust your diopter so you're getting a clear image through both bells. And then now you can forget about that diopter. Now you're just using your center focus wheel for anything adjusting focus, just like you would on a camera. You're going to adjust your focus maybe out to infinity to glass, way, way, way out there. But then as you're glassing something maybe inside 100 yards, your focus is going to move back closer. And that's all just done right on that center focus wheel.
Gotcha.
All right, so let's break down that big word you just said.
Yep.
What was the diopter? Is that right?
That's right.
Okay,
yep.
So that's the little scroll that is on one of your eyepieces, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that can be found on spotting scopes, rifle scopes, binoculars. That's pretty much across the board on optics.
Gotcha. Okay. Now, what is the purpose of having the eyepieces that go in and out?
So that's actually a great question. Everyone has a different preference with those eye cups that rotate. Now, guys that are using, like if you're wearing eyeglasses or if you're wearing sunglasses, you're going to want to keep those all the way in because, your eye relief, binoculars are just like a rifle scope. Eye relief gets talked about in rifle scopes all the time because people can visualize that a little bit more. They know that 3.5 inches of eye relief means that the distance from the rear end of your rifle scope, the eyepiece end of your rifle scope to your eye is 3.5 inches. That's a little bit more intuitive to visualize. Mm-hmm. And then they can realize that, okay, when the gun recoils, I have 3.5 inches between my eye and that scope to prevent any kind of scope bite. Whereas binoculars, that's a little bit, it gets kind of overlooked. So you can adjust your eye relief using those eye cups. And everyone's going to be a little bit, that's why there is such a wide variance there. You can twist them all the way in, you can twist them all the way out. For myself, especially on spotting scopes, when I'm zoomed in all the way, like up to 60x, I find that I get the best field of view without any obstructions using the eyepiece about kind of somewhere in that halfway kind of turned out, right between fully turned in and fully turned out, somewhere right in the middle is where I get the best image through the optic. Mm-hmm. And that's something that is going to be different for every person. So there's really no one size fits all, like everyone should run them all the way out. Everyone should run them all the way in. That's really not the case. So what folks should do is when they pick up a pair of binoculars, first thing in the morning when it starts breaking daylight, make sure that they're set up. Like, let's say a buddy used them the week before and you're using them for the first time now after that week. Make sure that those are set up for you so you don't have any kind of, poor experience getting a less than ideal image or anything like that.
Yeah. Gotcha. It's kind of funny because I'm a all the way in guy, and I shove them things way up in my eye sockets. Like, I don't know, I think my eyes are just deep in my head or something, but I have to push really hard to get it to where, my eye relief, I've got a full frame pretty much. And that doesn't change as much, but a lot of times when we're driving around, I always have binos on the dash or wherever. They're just in my truck, ready to go, right? No, it doesn't matter if I'm driving in Dallas traffic. I got binos. It's not just in the country. But I'll see something, I'll throw the binos up, and then I'll give it to Tyler to look at, and he'll look at it, and then I'll get them back, and I'll stick my binos up, and they'll go thunk right on the side of my head because he's just a bigger guy than I am, so his eyes are wider. And it's just funny how much difference. It's just kind of an example of how much difference there is in different people. I'll always have to get them back and get them back to where I'm at, and it's like what you're talking about is a great idea. I haven't really thought about it, but checking your optics in the morning, that way, you're ready to go whenever the moment of truth happens because it's going to happen fast. I never really thought about being that, that specific about it or diligent about it, but it's a great point.
Yeah,
man.
Definitely. And that is, as important as that is with binoculars or spotting scopes, it's even more important in rifle scopes because in that case, your optical diopter actually the purpose of it there is to affix your focus from your eye to the reticle. So if your diopter is super wonky, you might shoulder that rifle and you might have the most blurry looking reticle that you can even imagine. And, the knee-jerk reaction is, oh man, the scope there's something wrong with it. But a lot of times if you just take the time to adjust that diopter on the rear portion of the rifle scope, you're going to have a really crisp reticle. And then, then you won't have that issue. That's going to negate that for you.
Yeah. So speaking of that, what does a rifle hunter need to look at to help make a decision on a scope?
So there's a lot of things. I mean, the first thing, I get people every day that write in. I do a lot of the responding across social media platforms here at Vortex, and people are always writing in asking, hey, what's the best scope for my 6.5 Creedmoor? And, the first thing that I come back with is, I want to learn what their goals are for the gun. Is this a long-range gun that, they're going to be doing a lot of 500 to 1,000-yard shooting? Or is this their deer rifle that they're taking out in the big woods? They might shoot 250, 300 yards if that presents itself. But maybe most of their shots are 100 yards and in. So I want to figure out that, because there's a lot of different things like first focal plane reticles versus second focal plane reticles. And basically what that is, a first focal plane, all reticles have information on them. They're essentially a ruler. So your first focal plane reticle is going to have all those, those holdovers and your hash marks. And maybe it's a Christmas tree style reticle that has, windage adjustments that go way out, to the far edges of the optic. On a first focal plane rifle scope, as you increase or decrease your magnification, your reticle is actually going to grow and shrink in correlation with your zoom magnification. And now, the first thing that people are probably asking themselves, why the heck does that matter? The reason that that matters is because as you increase your magnification, your subtensions, which is your the information on that reticle, that is changing. So I'm picturing a BDC reticle, a second focal plane. The reticle is always the same size. A couple of years ago, there was a big campaign out there where basically all you had to do, was you knew which holdover you had for specific yardages. You put the holdover on the animal, squeeze the trigger, done deal. That's true, but that's only at one, and the second focal plane rifle scope, that's only true at one specific magnification throughout the range. So if it's a 3x9 rifle scope, odds are your subtension, your bullet drop compensator is only accurate at 9x. Whereas if that's a 3x9 first focal plane rifle scope, where your reticle is growing and shrinking as you increase or decrease your magnifications, you're going to be able to use those holdovers across the entire magnification range. And none of that is going to change. So that's one of the biggest considerations for a lot of guys that are just doing general hunting applications. 90% of those folks, I'm going to actually recommend a second focal plane reticle for a couple of reasons. First being that, that reticle is always the same size. Most times for a lot of people, especially if you're hunting, whitetails, you're not into super long range, situations. Maybe you're shooting out to 300 yards and that's probably a poke for you, So in that situation, the second focal plane rifle scope, that reticle is going to be easier to pick up because it's heavier. It literally looks darker because it's a thicker post and all that stuff across all the magnification ranges. Whereas a first focal plane reticle in the thick timber, when you quick shoulder that gun and you're backed out maybe to 4X or whatever, I'm picturing a 4-16 first focal plane rifle scope. At 4X, when you just, shoulder that gun, that reticle is so small because, like we mentioned, it's growing and shrinking, and at the lowest end of your magnification range, that reticle is super small. So it might be tough to pick it up, especially if you're hunting in thick timber or something like that.
Cool, man. So what about, the AR platform is pretty popular these days. What do you see a lot of guys using as far as a scope goes there?
The hot thing right now is low power variables. So a low power variable is a 1 to something. So a 1 to 6, a 1 to 8, a 1 to 10, anything that has a really wide magnification range. And the reason for that is the AR is a very versatile gun. It can be used for everything from hunting to home defense to recreational shooting, competitive shooting. So that one, for example, our Razor Gen 2 1 to 6 is, it essentially operates as a red dot when you're on 1X. It has an illuminated center dot that you can turn on and off. Also, obviously, it has a reticle in there too, but you can illuminate your center dot. And when you're backed out to 1X, let's say you're clearing a room or something like that, you literally are going to see no change in magnification at 1X through your eye or through the rifle scope. So you have super fast target acquisition, and then you also have the versatility to go all the way up to 6 and everything in between there. So it's basically you're matching a super versatile rifle with a super versatile optic.
Yeah. That's cool, man. Yeah, I don't know a lot about that. Pretty bow hunter through and through. Casey has messed with that kind of thing a little more than I have, being in in depredation and stuff like that in the past. So
yeah.
Well, you talk about that functioning as a red dot. I don't remember the right term. It might be parallax, but anyways. So a lot of times, like with your true red dots, even if you aren't shouldered all the way or you don't have your perfect anchor point, the dot kind of adjusts for that, and you're still going to hit where your dot is. Does that work? Does that work the same way with that 1-6 razor?
It does not.
Okay.
So that's a great point, because the dot that you would envision in like a traditional red dot, you know how it can kind of dance around throughout the tube?
Yeah.
The reason for that is that's a LED that's projected into the optical system through what's called an LED emitter, and that just, essentially projects that dot somewhere in your optics. So as you move your head, adjust left to right, up and down, that dot's going to move with you, whereas the Razor Gen 2 that we just talked about, it is still a rifle scope, meaning that it does have a tangible reticle inside of it. Mm-hmm. So whereas the red dot is emitting an LED, in a rifle scope with an illuminated reticle, that's simply an illumination function that would light up that center dot. So I guess the reason that it kind of replicates a red dot is you still have that super wide field of view. You still have a red center dot that, as long as that's on my target and I'm pulling the trigger, I'm going to be hitting what I'm shooting at. So there are some subtle differences, but that's actually a really good point.
Yeah. So I know you guys have a pretty great warranty. What is the number one replacement or fix that you guys take on?
Oh, man. By far and away, over-torqued rings in rifle scopes.
Oh, really?
So a lot of guys, yeah. And myself included, like, I think about this now, like, from a perspective of someone who works at an optics company versus me, even, like, 3 years ago before I worked at an optics company, like, I would buy a rifle scope and I would be like, oh, yeah, I got these rings. I'm going to put it in there and I'm going to tighten these things up and I'm going to go shooting tomorrow morning. That'll work, but you're kind of playing with fire there, because what you're going to want to do is, like, every ring is, basically the rifle scopes in our lineup need to be torqued between 16 to 18 inch pounds. So anything higher than that, you can actually create an impediment on your tube, which is going to then kind of like create some pressure on the rifle scope's erector system, which is what, controls your image quality, just a slew of other things. So if that thing is being impeded, you're going to have, your groups are going to be all over the place. The scope just isn't going to perform. And sometimes if it's, not severe enough case, you can just back it out to the proper 18 inch pounds and you'll be good to go. But if it's really over torqued, like, 25, 26 inch pounds, that's a scope that is going to actually need to come back, and we'll replace that for you.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
It's crazy, man.
Gotcha.
That's a lot of, man, it's just so detail oriented when it comes to the rifle game.
It is unreal.
My warranty that I did last year was a little bit more cut and dry. I just left them on top of the vehicle and then they just went flying. So it was definitely not a repair.
That happens way more than you would imagine.
Yeah.
I mean, we actually had a guy who, this is a super cool story. A guy dropped his spotting scope. He was on some Western hunt, and, his spotting scope blew over and actually, like, fell down a mountainside. Like, it fell off a cliff, like hundreds of feet. Yeah, and the thing cracked in half, and he was using a Diamondback spotting scope. He was able to go down there, and he somehow figured out a way where he, like, put it back together, and then he took a stick and wrapped the stick in, it was either, like, athletic wrap or duct tape. I think it was duct tape. And he had things aligned well enough that he was able to finish his hunt. I mean, he was in the backcountry, so, like, it wasn't a deal where he could just next day us that scope and we would take care of it for him. It was way more of a process. But he was able to finish his hunt with that, and then he sent us the scope, and he sent it as is, and we were like, holy crap, this is the most ingenious thing I've ever seen. This guy literally was able to finish his hunt with nothing more than a stick and duct tape. So
That's cool.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah, man, that is cool.
That's bad to the bone.
Is that like the craziest thing you've seen there as far as replacements go?
That's one of them. I mean, it's super weird how many rifle scopes we see that have been shot.
Shot?
That's always one of the craziest. Like, there was a guy that put his gun in a case, and I think he had like his buddy's gun in there too. Somehow, a gun went off, and like as he was putting the gun in the case. I mean, this is common gun safety, people. Like, just don't put the loaded gun in the case.
Exactly. Yeah, no kidding.
But, I mean, in this guy's defense, like, a mistake happened. Thankfully, no one was hurt or anything like that, but it did, it did a number on his buddy's scope that came in, and we replaced it.
Golly, man.
As you can imagine, a rifle scope doesn't live up to a 30-06 bullet. So.
yeah, full replacement.
Yeah, no kidding. No matter how good good the components are,
crazy,
it's not going to work.
Exactly.
So, like, kind of while we're on the Vortex thing, like, y'all are known for your warranty, right? Like, it's one of the best warranties in the business. Something I used last year to the full effect. But like, another thing that I feel like Vortex in particular is known for is offering good optics at a good price point, and then you can also step up to the higher end stuff when you want or need, right? Like with the Razor versus, like, I run Diamondbacks on my binos and I love them, right? So I don't know. Well, ago you're talking about like this is way back at the beginning of when we started talking, but you talked about like the 8x42 Razors or whatever they were. And for me, I have a hard time understanding like what the purpose is of spending that amount on a 8x42. And I'm not saying there's not one, but I would like for maybe you to kind of explain a little bit about, like, when is it worth spending the extra money for the higher end optic versus, like, when is it okay to just say, hey, I'm going to be glassing from the tree stand with this is what I need, or am I completely off on my thought pattern in general?
No, you're spot on right there. I mean, so the binoculars that I've actually been using all turkey season have been Diamondback 8x42s.
Yeah.
And even to me, somebody who works at an optics company and spends a lot of time, looking through different glass and whatnot, I definitely see a difference in optical performance when I compare the Razor to the Diamondback. That's just flat out. The Razor is going to be a crisper image. You're going to have more image resolution, detail, clarity, edge-to-edge clarity, and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But for the average user, and like somebody who maybe is hunting on, they're hunting weekends, as much as they can. They're not spending, a month on end out in the backcountry, glassing for days and days and days. That, that user is going to notice different things than the casual weekend warrior. So really it comes down to, like, you're going to have it. You do flat out just the way that optical systems are designed. You do, as you go up in our lineup from Crossfire, Diamondback, Viper, and Razor, as you go up, your optical system gets better. So you're going to notice those things, those improvements. But for the average person, if you're working with a budget, what I would recommend everyone to do is just go to a retailer and compare them side by side. And you might look through a pair of Viper binoculars, and then you might look through a pair of Diamondbacks and be like, man, I can't really see the difference between these. So then that just made up your purchase decision for you. And then you end up going with the Diamondbacks. Yeah. And that's what, that's what I do. That's what countless others, that work at Vortex. And that's what we recommend all of our customers to do, because, like I kind of touched on this earlier, like, optics are a really subjective thing. I mean, if you think about like glasses prescriptions, everyone's eyes are built a little bit different. No two people are going to have the exact same, like personal optical quality in their own eyes. So treat your optics no different than that, and just get your hands on as much as you can. Feel the differences, observe the differences, and then, make that decision for yourself.
Yeah, man, good advice. And, no pun intended. Thanks for all the clarity in this, Erik. How can the listener find out more about Vortex?
Yeah, they can, obviously go to our website, vortexoptics.com. We're all over social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. We actually have a super loyal Reddit following. So if anyone's on Reddit, hit us up on there. And we also just started a podcast at Vortex, the Vortex Nation podcast. And that we've covered everything from like, you know, a long range 1001, 1002, 1003, all the way to like shooting out, you know, 1004 level class where we're shooting out to like 2 miles.
Wow.
And we've talked about like hunting stories, recipes, everything you can imagine. So, you know, that's called the Vortex Nation podcast. We're also on social media there too. So check that out. That's a really cool resource for people.
Cool. Yeah. We'll link to that in the show notes. So if you're listening and you're interested, go check it out.
What's going through the pizza oven today, man?
Oh man, that is actually just earlier this week. Jimmy did I think a ribeye steak in the pizza oven, and it is astonishing how mean of a pizza oven that thing will cook a ribeye steak. It's unbelievable.
That's cool. That's cool. Yeah, it's one of my. I mean, of course, I enjoy all the Vortex social media, but I enjoy the lightheartedness of what we can cook in a pizza oven and make good. It's pretty fun. It's a good time. Sounds like
absolutely.
Y'all have a lot of fun in the office up there.
We do, man. It's a great place to be. We have a ton of fun. It's a really cool group.
Awesome. Well, thanks for your time, Erik. I appreciate you taking time out of the busy schedule and several times to get on this podcast with us. And I'm sure we'll be talking to you soon, man.
Absolutely. I appreciate you guys having me on, man. That's awesome to hear that I am the top dog as far as appearances.
That's awesome.
Now people got something to strive for here.
That's right, dude. Man. That's right. And you've got a reputation to uphold, man. So looking forward to seeing what you can get done this fall.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Likewise. We'll definitely be in touch, and I look forward to talking to you guys again.
All right, man. We'll see you. Man, there are so many things I have to buy before September.
No kidding. I probably am going to buy my shelter this week, I think.
Are you?
Yeah.
Dang, that's exciting.
Yeah, kind of. Well, we were talking about our vacations earlier, and I kind of want that here and like ready to go before vacation and kind of know how to mess around with it.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't think I got to have like that much more optics for the elk hunt. I would like to do a spotter.
Yeah, like a lightweight spotter.
Yeah, a
would
lightweight
be cool.
spotter would be cool, but I don't know if I have to have it. But for deer season, I think that it would be nice, like between us, if we split one or whatever it is, to have one. Because, I mean, you and I both have like I've got like a 1970 model. You got like a 1990 model Tasco or something where it's like, is that a deer or is that just a fuzzy spot? You know, and it's kind of.
I don't know if it's gotten worse or what.
You might have just looked through better things.
It may be, but I feel like used to, I'd watch ducks there at the lodge, you know, I'd watch ducks in the winter and it wasn't great, but like you could see the color of their eyes and stuff, you know, pretty cool. And like now I feel like you can't even look through it. Like there's not even a spot where you can look through it and actually see a picture.
Yeah, it's kind of rough. The first time I used it was when that buck was bedded, I guess, what was that, day 2 of our rutcation little hunt. We had that buck bedded in the plum thicket at like 115 yards. And I'm looking at it through my binos, and I throw that thing on the window. I'm like, oh, my goodness.
I'm going back to binos.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. So, but it's good to have guys like Erik to like kind of inform us, help us like spend our money wisely, right?
That's right,
Make good decisions. And that's why we started the Backcountry series that we're gonna be doing here pretty shortly through June and July, because these are the guys that like.
And gals.
And gals.
As of yesterday.
Yes. Yeah. And so, we're going to have more than just gal. We're going to have gals on this thing too. So it's like cool that we're going to get a different perspective. People that aren't necessarily hunters, because there's a lot of things that like hunters can box themselves in with. And you listen to the same like 20 guys on podcasts.
Just making the circuit.
Making the circuit, you know, and it's like, you're not getting a whole lot of new information. So this is going to be good stuff. I can guarantee you guys you're going to learn something from this series somewhere. And anyway, it's just good to have those people who've been there, done that, and like you can learn from their mistakes, whether it's cutting their foot on coral and getting an infection or what else have we heard? Some crazy stories so far in our interviews.
It's kind of funny, the variance on some things and then the consistency on others. Because just a little snippet, but like everybody pretty much says, wear a sturdy boot in the backcountry. When like there's always articles about like, well, should you run trail runners or should you run boots? Well, the consensus pretty much is put on a pair of boots and go.
We've had one person talk about the trail runners as being kind of their go-to, and the rest of them so far have said boots. So, but we've still got several of those to interview, so I'm excited to see what they have to say.
When are we going to start releasing those?
I'm going to try to get those going in like early June.
That's kind of what I thought.
Like first week.
Kind of part of like what we do while you're gone, kind of thing.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. So, and I just think that for anything like. I mean, to be real about this, like people need to hear this information in June so they can get their money together and buy stuff before September and, for sheep hunters, August, late August. But
that's right. Stinks for y'all because I'm getting the information in May right now.
That's right. Yeah. So you're about to buy your tent or whatever, shelter.
Yeah.
But it's I want to make sure it's out there and people can find it and listen to it and make their hear plenty of them before it's like July or August and they really are going to need to spend some money on tags and boots and everything else. So, and obviously like boots, you're going to want to break them in. So you're going to need to know like what you want to do there. So pretty early on. So anyway, that's the deal. But don't forget, we caught a state record.
That's right.
We did it on video. So go watch it on YouTube right here at the end of this podcast. To see what we're talking about. And
we'll link to that below. We're going to link to all the Vortex stuff below. I've been using Vortex Optics for a few years and always love them. I had a big warranty situation. Not their fault, totally mine. Flew off the roof of the car, and they got them back to me ASAP. So,
did you have a lot of stuff that goes up on the roof? I feel like.
What else did I?
I mean, not a lot, but like it just the shoes in Bozeman.
Oh, that's right.
I think you left your keys there at elk camp last year. Didn't you say you found your keys on top of your Jeep?
I don't know. Did I?
Pretty sure in the footage I watched, you had lost your keys like the first day or something.
Oh, no.
Maybe it wasn't the first day, but for a while you lost your keys. So.
That would not be good. And that's why, like when we talk about this in this backcountry series, talking about packs and different things, like the less pockets, the better for me because it's just less places to put something that you forget where you put it.
Yeah. So. I don't know. And I don't know. I've definitely been changed there as far as my thoughts. But, like, I guess I've just been, like, not necessarily changed, but, like, I've just been forced to think, like, what do I mean by I'm a pockety guy? And it doesn't really mean...
What do you mean?
It doesn't really mean that I need 8 pockets. I just need 2 or 3,
I think what you need is a minimalist backpack with no pockets and a bino harness. I think that's what you need because that seems to be what everybody that I see that says, like, oh, no pockets for me. And we talked about the harness here with Eric. Like that thing on your chest, it's just like you have a chest pack for fly fishing, right? You used to have one. Like they're kind of nice to have, and binos, wind checker,
My issue though with the bino harness is that I have a camera a lot that does not handle my camera.
Well, you're gonna have to. Well, this might be a whole nother podcast, but those little backpack shoulder strap things, you know what I'm talking about? They clicks in right there on your shoulder. I think that's the way to go.
That's what I've been thinking about too lately. But I just
go ahead.
I don't know. I don't know how it's going to all look because I hadn't had the money to drop on all that stuff yet.
Yeah, I know. I hear you. It's kind of crazy how expensive some small things can be.
I know.
And then you're like, wow, I can get this huge thing right here for $20. Okay, cool.
yeah.
But anyways, guys, go check out our YouTube video there and be looking forward to that backcountry series because it's going to be pretty awesome. I'm pretty excited about all what I've learned from it, and hopefully y'all will find it beneficial as well.
Yeah, for sure. And if you're liking what you're finding here, man, we really do thrive off of those iTunes reviews. And if you don't feel like writing anything out, you can still give us a 5-star review, and that's helpful. So
that's right.
We would appreciate that tremendously. Anything else?
That's it.
All right, man. Well, hope you guys have a great week and weekend. And remember, this is your element.
Live in it.
Hey everybody, listen up. I got mega huge news. Meat Eater Live is heading back out on the road. That's right. Join me and the crew. Clay Newcomb, Cal, Yanni, Spencer's going to be there. Phil the engineer's going to be there. Meat Eater Live, headed back out. Now, when you get every ticket, okay, every ticket you buy, you get a signed copy of our new Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook. This tour is celebrating the release of the book. Buy a ticket, get a signed copy, Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook, wild game recipes for the grill, smoker, camp stove, and campfire, which I'll point out is a $38 value. Here's where we're going to go. April 23rd, the Mesa Art Center in Mesa, Arizona. April 24th, the the Balboa Theater in San Diego. April 25, the Grove in Anaheim, California. April 27, the Crest Theater in Sacramento. April 29, the Union in Salt Lake City. April 30, the Egyptian in Boise. May 1, the Wilma Theater in Missoula. May 2, the Bing Crosby Theater in Spokane, Washington. May 4, Revolution Hall in Portland, Oregon. And May 5, the last day of the tour, Pantages Theater in Tacoma, Washington. For tickets and more information, visit the events page at themeateater.com. Hope to see you at the show.